All right, let's talk about money and sports because legendary Gamecock A'ja Wilson signed a record-setting new deal with the Las Vegas Aces. They're going to pay her a guaranteed $5 million over the next 3 years.
Huge breaking news out of the WNBA. The Las Vegas Aces have made A'ja Wilson the highest paid player in league history.
Go ahead with your bad self. What they thought this was?
WNBA just broke the internet, and it's not because of some crazy dunk or highlight play. Nope. It's because A'ja Wilson just flipped the script with a $5 million deal that's shaking up the entire sports world. The game is changing, and A'ja's contract isn't just a paycheck, it's the beginning of a new era where women's basketball finally gets the financial recognition it deserves.
Y'all, it's the biggest contract in WNBA history. The 29-year-old was drafted by the Aces back in 2018, leading Las Vegas to the WNBA title in 2022, 2023, and then, again, last year. She's also been named the WNBA's MVP 4 straight years and is also a 2-time Olympic gold medalist.
Let's start with the basics, because some of you are still catching up, and that's okay. A'ja Wilson plays for the Las Vegas Aces. She is, without any serious debate, the best player in the WNBA. She just became the highest-paid athlete in the history of the league with a 3-year deal that puts her at a number no woman in professional basketball has ever touched. And the craziest part? She earned every single penny of it before she even signed the paper.
A 4-time MVP has led the Aces to 3 WNBA championships. As you can see there, the highest total contract value, A'ja Wilson now at the top. She's also a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. She is now signed in Vegas through the 2028 season.
Let's talk about what A'ja actually did in the 2024 season. Because if you want to understand why $5 million feels almost like a bargain, you need to sit with these numbers for a moment. 23 points per game, 10 rebounds per game, a scoring title, co-defensive player of the year. She was destroying people on offense and then turning around and suffocating them on defense. That is not a basketball player. That is a problem. That is a force of nature in a ponytail and Nikes. There is not a single player in the women's game who does what A'ja Wilson does at the level she does it, and if anyone tries to argue that point with you, ask them to name one, just one, and then watch them go quiet.
She is the first and currently the only the highest paid athlete in all of women's basketball in the WNBA. A'ja Wilson just can't help but to break records and sketch her name into stone. Okay, she etched her name into greatness, into the legacy, into like the Hall of Fame.
She is also a 4-time MVP. No other player in WNBA history has done that. Not once, not twice, not 3 times. 4. And she did not collect those trophies by accident or by playing on a stacked roster while coasting. She willed those awards into existence with her work ethic, her intensity, and a level of basketball IQ that genuinely makes analysts lose their minds trying to explain it. She is the rare player who makes her teammates better just by being on the floor, because defenses are so consumed with stopping her that everyone else gets an open look.
3 years, $5 million, and it's fully guaranteed. Fully guaranteed. The largest in WNBA history. We absolutely love that. And then we hear that news and we think, oh.
And here is the part that people sleep on the most. After the Aces took a brutal loss to the Minnesota Lynx last season, A'ja did not sulk on social media. She did not make excuses in a press conference. She did not quietly disappear into the offseason. She texted her team, and the message was simple and savage at the same time. If you were not embarrassed by that loss, do not come into the gym. That is a leader. That is someone who holds herself and everyone around her to a standard that most professional athletes only pretend to have. That is why Las Vegas did not blink when they wrote that check.
as it relates to the WNBA, but to really say that we are seeing the largest contract in WNBA history to date at $5 million. And for it to be A'ja Wilson, it just makes perfect sense. A'ja Wilson has catapulted this Las Vegas Aces team over the last several years. And this is a team that she was drafted to. Like, this is a place that she has played her entire career.
Now, about that check. $5 million sounds massive, and it is, but let's put it in proper context so you actually understand what just shifted in professional women's sports. The old WNBA Supermax salary was $250,000. $250,000, that was the ceiling. That was the most the league's best player could make. You could get more than that hosting a moderately successful podcast. You could make more than that appearing in 3 commercials for a regional grocery chain. $250,000 was supposed to be the reward for being the greatest basketball player in a professional league. It was insulting, and everyone knew it, and for years, players just had to accept it because there was no alternative.
But specifically for a player like A'ja Wilson, who has just had this kind of payday, it could be an extra motivator to keep expanding her game and finding different ways to be successful. I think we best saw that last season with her comfortability out on the perimeter. She's shooting more threes.
The new collective bargaining agreement changed the math completely. The Supermax went from $250,000 to $1.4 million per year as the baseline new maximum. And then A'ja's deal pushed even beyond that into historic territory, landing at a contract that reflects what her actual market value has always been. This is not the league doing A'ja a favor. This is the league finally catching up to reality after years of pretending that women's basketball was some sort of charity project rather than a legitimate, growing, money-making product.
To say that she ain't the best player in the league, to me,
it's insane.
It's insanity.
It's absurd.
It's absurd. So for me, man, $5 million on 3 years. She made history today. We have came a long way.
We have come a long way.
A long way.
And the timing of this deal is everything. The WNBA is in the middle of its most explosive growth period in history. Television ratings are up, attendance is up, merchandise sales are up, social media engagement is through the roof. Caitlin Clark happened, and even people who had never watched a single second of women's basketball in their lives suddenly could not stop talking about the sport. New franchises are being added. Investment is pouring in from people who used to look the other way. The league is expanding its media footprint in ways that would have seemed impossible 5 years ago.
A'ja Wilson not just setting all of those records like Tarika just said, but doing so, quote, with the utmost confidence, authenticity, and grace. This is what endears people to A'ja Wilson and by proxy, the Las Vegas Aces and the WNBA. She has been so loyal, whether you look at...
Speaking of Caitlin Clark, let's just briefly acknowledge what her presence in the league has done to the visibility conversation, because it is directly connected to why a deal like A'ja's is even possible right now. Clark came into the WNBA as the most hyped rookie in the history of the sport, and she delivered. Indiana Fever games became must-watch television. Arenas sold out. Ratings jumped. And while Indiana celebrated like they had already won something just by having her in a uniform, the rest of the league was quietly watching the business opportunity grow in real time. Clark is a phenomenon. Clark is a marketing machine. And every single thing she does for the visibility of women's basketball makes deals like A'ja's $5 million contract more financially justifiable to ownership groups and sponsors across the league.
That A'ja Wilson was going to be one of these people. If anything, I think also going back to what Nikki Fargas said, the news coming out today as we get ready for training camps over the weekend is because of that love and that passion and that leadership that A'ja Wilson also has.
A'ja's contract is also a litmus test for every other team in the league. If the Aces are willing to pay their best player what she is actually worth, what does that say to every other franchise about how they are valuing their own stars? This deal creates pressure across the entire league. players who are performing at elite levels now have a real number to point to in contract negotiations. Agents have a benchmark. Front offices can no longer pretend that budget constraints are the only reason salaries stay low. Aja Wilson just walked into the room, signed her name, and changed the negotiating landscape for every woman in the WNBA, whether they play for Vegas or not.
In the WNBA's new collective bargaining agreement, the Supermax contract rose from $250,000 in the last CBA to $1.4. That's a huge jump, from $250,000 to $1.4 million. Wilson's contract is fully guaranteed and sets a record for the largest deal in WNBA history.
The other thing that needs to be said clearly is that this contract is not just about basketball. It is about what women's sports have been demanding for decades: equal recognition, equal investment, equal belief that the product on the floor is worth paying to see and worth paying the people who create it. Aja Wilson has been one of the loudest voices on this issue, not just in interviews, but through her actual performance. She has made it impossible to look away, and now the money is finally starting to reflect that impossibility.
Everyone else could get paid. And a part of this announcement for the Aces is that with Aja Wilson, they have upward of 90% of their scoring from last season.
The Las Vegas Aces are not done building either. Aja is the foundation, but Chelsea Gray is locked in alongside her, bringing one of the most composed and dangerous point guards in the game. And now Jewel Lloyd has joined that core, giving the Aces a big three that looks terrifying on paper and even more terrifying when you watch them actually play together. This roster is built to compete through 2028, and if you think the rest of the league is comfortable with that timeline, you are not paying attention to how nervous other front offices get when the Aces come up in conversation. $5 million, 3 years. The most dominant player in the game, locked in Las Vegas, surrounded by elite talent, coached by one of the sharpest minds in basketball. The WNBA has a face, a franchise, and now a financial statement that proves the sport is operating at a completely different level than it was even 3 years ago. This deal is the starting gun, not the finish line. And anyone who thinks the numbers stop here has not been watching what this league has been quietly becoming while everyone else was distracted.
Because I think if anyone deserves this contract and would probably be the first to get a contract like this, it should be Aja Wilson. She's the best player in the league, hands down. And you typically reserve these types of contracts for the best players. But what I think this does is certainly open up an opportunity for other players. Now, the only other player...
Aja Wilson's story does not end at the contract signing. That was the headline. What comes next is where it gets genuinely interesting. The Las Vegas Aces are not just a great basketball team right now. They are building something that the WNBA has never really seen before: a sustained, deliberate, properly funded dynasty that is designed to dominate for the better part of a decade. And with Aja locked in, with the roster they are assembling, and with the coaching they have in place, the rest of the league should be deeply uncomfortable going into every single season for the foreseeable future.
Kennedy Carter has signed a training camp contract with the Las Vegas Aces. Now, Kennedy Carter, she's someone that has been out of the league for 2 years, but she is an extremely talented individual.
Let's talk about Kennedy Carter, because she is the story inside the story that not enough people are discussing. Carter is back in the WNBA. She is back with the Aces. And if you know anything about what this woman does with a basketball in her hands, you understand why that addition changes the entire depth conversation for Las Vegas. Carter is the kind of player who makes highlight reels look effortless. She scores in ways that make you rewind the clip twice just to confirm you saw it correctly. She creates off the dribble, she finishes through contact, and she has a natural flair for the dramatic moment that you simply cannot coach into someone. Either you have that gene or you do not, and Kennedy Carter was born with it.
a human highlight reel, if we are being completely honest. She has insane handles and has a really outstanding shot creating and shot making abilities. That's big things. She can create her own shots.
The real question everyone kept asking when this reunion was announced was whether Carter could fit inside the Aces system. And that question is fair because Becky Hammon does not run a system built around individual brilliance for its own sake. Hammon runs a system built around winning, and those are two different things. She is the kind of coach who will sit a talented player before she lets that player's ego disrupt what the team is trying to accomplish. She has zero patience for selfish basketball, zero tolerance for players who put their highlight reel ahead of the final score, and zero interest in managing around someone who cannot buy into the collective. Carter knows this. The Aces organization knows this. And the fact that this reunion happened anyway suggests that Carter has grown in ways the public has not fully seen yet. If Hammon is comfortable bringing her in, that tells you everything about where Carter's head is right now.
The main question with Carter comes in, though, is where does she fit? I mentioned the big three. You already have Jackie Young and Chelsea Gray in the backcourt, but you also have a Jewel Lloyd who had a little bit of a lesser role last season.
What Carter adds to this roster in practical terms is depth that suddenly makes the Aces look almost unfair. You already have Aja Wilson making life miserable for opposing defenses in the post. You already have Chelsea Gray running the offense with the calmness of someone who has been in every high-pressure moment imaginable. You already have Jewel Lloyd, who can get hot from three-point range and turn a close game into a blowout inside of 4 minutes. Now you add a player who can create her own shot off the bench, who can take pressure off the starters when they need a rest, and who brings an energy shift that changes the feel of the game. That is a championship depth chart. That is what separates teams that win 1 title from teams that win 3.
She was one of the most vocal players at all times with her leadership on the court, but with the media, she really conveyed the idea that this was a team full of 6 women.
The Aces are locked in together through 2028. Let that sink in for a moment. This core, this specific group of players, has committed to building something together over multiple seasons. That kind of continuity is almost extinct in professional basketball, where trades, free agency, and contract disputes tear apart good teams before they ever reach their ceiling. Las Vegas has managed to keep their best players bought in, paid fairly, and pointing in the same direction. That is not luck. That is organizational competence, and it is rarer than people realize. Other franchises spend years trying to manufacture the culture that the Aces have apparently figured out how to sustain naturally.
I do think that the Las Vegas Aces will be a team. They, of course, are the team to beat because they are going to come into the season as the reigning champions.
Now let's have the honest conversation about money. Because not everything about this new financial era is a clean, uncomplicated celebration. The WNBA is growing fast, genuinely fast, but fast growth creates its own set of complications that do not always show up in the highlight packages. The league is still working through the economics of paying superstar salaries while maintaining competitive balance across a range of markets. Las Vegas is a strong market. Las Vegas has a passionate fan base, a committed ownership group, and a team that gives people a reason to show up. Not every franchise in the league can say the same thing.
Life-changing money, and Asia's the first to sign the biggest deal ever. It's right on time. Now, you know, people say that there's a whole lot of haters as far as the bets and all that stuff in the league. They got a nice little they broke them off too. So I love how that was negotiated with the CBA about them getting, I love that.
Same.
You know,
Small market teams are now facing tough decisions as Aja's $5 million contract raises questions about how they can build competitive rosters without the financial backing of larger markets. As salary caps rise and supermax deals become more common, these teams risk being left behind. While the WNBA's revenue is growing, it's still not at the scale of the NBA, and the league must carefully manage its expanding financial landscape. The momentum is there, but it must be nurtured to ensure long-term sustainability and success.
They turned it around, spearheaded by the one and only A'ja Wilson, and ended up on top yet again. So I think you'd be crazy to not think that this is a team that will easily try to contend and will defend their championship.
Which brings us to the critics, and there are critics because there always are. Some of the pushback on A'ja's deal has been about salary distribution across the roster. The argument goes that concentrating this much money on one player, even the best player in the league, creates an imbalance that makes it harder to build depth around her. It is a real concern in theory. In practice, the Aces seem to have solved this problem by building smart and locking in talented players before the market fully inflated. The other line of criticism you will see on social media, and let's be direct about this, some people still aren't comfortable with women's sports commanding this kind of money. They question whether A'ja deserves $5 million, not because they've watched her play, but because they've already put a ceiling on women's basketball in their own heads. The market is answering that question loudly, and no amount of comment section skepticism changes what the financial reality is becoming.
And it's like, again, I don't hear nobody say these women deserve it. A'ja Wilson is still underpaid. They could be paying her a little bit more, if you ask me. So again, she deserves her success. Shout out to A'ja Wilson, dominating on and off the court. She's just going to continue to break records, set records, okay?
A'ja Wilson's marketability off the court is also a piece of this that deserves attention. She is not just a basketball player anymore in the way that matters commercially. She has built a public profile that extends well beyond the sport. Endorsement deals, commercial appearances, brand partnerships, these things follow genuine star power, and A'ja has it in a way that translates across audiences. The WNBA's commercial growth depends on players like her being visible, being compelling, and being associated with a product that sponsors want to attach their names to. $5 million in salary is also an investment in keeping the face of your league happy, committed, and representing your sport at the highest level in every room she walks into.
With players that they've been working with. Again, if we look at the Aces, they shored up Chelsea Gray. They were able to bring back, Jackie Young, and now have A'ja Wilson. They want to be able to do that.
What A'ja Wilson has done, and what this contract represents, is proof that the ceiling in women's basketball is no longer where everyone assumed it was. 3 years ago, the conversation about WNBA salaries felt like a distant dream that activists talked about, but ownership groups resisted. Today, the highest paid player in league history just signed her deal, and the number starts with a 5. The trajectory from $250,000 to $5 million in Supermax value did not happen by accident. It happened because the product got better, the audience got bigger, the investment got serious, and players like A'ja Wilson refused to perform at an extraordinary level while accepting an ordinary valuation. The Las Vegas Aces are going to chase titles. A'ja Wilson is going to chase history. Kennedy Carter is going to make people lose their minds on highlight reels. Becky Hammon is going to outcoach everyone in the league with a quiet intensity that makes winning look routine. And the WNBA is going to keep growing into something that looks nothing like what it was even 5 years ago. The contract was the announcement. Everything that comes after it is the proof. And if you have been sleeping in this league, on this team, on this player, the alarm just went off and it is not going to stop ringing. And if you're not watching this league right now, you better start, because the future of basketball is here and it's a force to be reckoned with.